Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asbadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmiti Mochi Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshmam Om Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om, Namaste, welcome. We are here back to Panchadasi. We will stay with it for some time. And we're gonna take a look, but possibly I will, in the near future, change the course of this Panchadasi webinar into the transcriptions of Swami Paramarthananda. So the only downside is that we may not be able to finish it in this lifetime because it is thousands of pages. But it's lovely to be in touch with his words. We'll see. I'm teaching the Gita from his transcriptions this time, and it's a long project involving translations a lot, all the time, but it's worth it. Yeah. So we are on the 6th chapter, page 138. Definition of Vichara, of inquiry. No, we have done that. Huh?
We did the first chapter of the first paragraph of definition of inquiry.
The first paragraph of definition of inquiry. Okay. Oh, is that so? So have we done the verse 13, Lynn? Is that where we should begin? Yeah?
Yeah, I would think, yeah.
So we have to contextualize the following verse, looking into the definition of inquiry. Now it's an investigation in the light of the teachings of the Upanishads, and we need a means of knowledge, a proper means of knowledge, a knowledge that will just reveal this knowledge, which is the knowledge in respect to my true fundamental free nature. Yeah? And for that, as we have seen here in the words of the author here, it requires a lot of commitment, a burning desire, intense desire, abiding commitment to Vedanta. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa, a strong desire for self-knowledge. So self-inquiry is not closing your eyes and asking, who am I? We know that. Although we have done that in the past, most probably. I don't know about you, Claude, but, I tried that way as well. Just asking, who am I, hoping that a clear answer. I knew the answer already because I have read everything available in the spiritual market. But, I was waiting something that would happen, an epiphany that would say, yes, you are the self. But as Ramji often says, even if there is a voice coming from the sky saying, you are the self, yet I don't know what it means to be the self. And I don't know what to do with it. So if you think the inquiry is closing your eyes, you are mistaken. Vedanta is like a mirror composed by words which will reflect back to you your true nature. This is a beautiful analogy of the way Vedanta works. Reveals the self to the self. This process of vichara, self-inquiry, will negate the jiva and the world as the ultimate reality. And then once this jiva and jagata are negated, so the self is going to be left, because the self is that which can never be negated, because even for negating the self needs to be present to negate the self. So there is no way around it. The self is that, consciousness, existence is that which can never be negated. So the negation is not going to destroy the jiva and jagata, as we know. We have seen it several times in several verses, in several texts. The jiva in the world is going to remain where they are after self-knowledge is clear and properly established in the mind. So the only difference is that they will be seen as appearance within myself, consciousness. It's a phenomenal occurring within myself. And this self is of non-dual nature, is one without a second. Everything and everyone is this Satchitananda, this consciousness. Otherwise, one who sleeps or snores or sons would be liberated. What is sons?
A swoon. It's like a swoon is like a faint.
Okay, yeah, now I remember. Yeah, if you faint, and then if moksha, the end product of this self-inquiry is self-knowledge and moksha. If moksha is the absence of jiva and jagata, so the state of this deep sleep, or the state of fainting, or take anesthesia, in which you disappear and the world disappear, that would do the job, because you would be liberated. But we know it does not work that way. It has to be in the awakened state. And once we get it, we are not going to get rid of the jiva and jagata, because they belong to Ishvara. Ishvara has put it both, that is both principles, jiva, jagat, and only Ishvara can pull it back from time to time. Moksha is not a change in the experience of the world or the appearance of the world. It's only clear knowledge of the difference between consciousness and whatsoever appears within me, consciousness. It's not non-experience. It's not a non-experience of the world, as we know. It's not a disappearance of the world, as we know, because in a mystical state, I may have somehow a shutdown, of my system, and I don't see anything in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then I may say, okay, Jesus is the self, as we know. This is the most common conception and mistake done by a lot of people meditating in the world. So once everything disappears, and then I got to my destination, Jesus is the self, and that takes us into that misleading notion that the self is nothingness, the self is the void, emptiness, which is very much pervasive in the Buddhist culture. Vichara, or investigation, leaves the world and jiva's experience of duality of it intact. Experience of duality does not negate the knowledge I am Satchitananda. Experience of duality does not negate, does not cancel, it's not in contradiction with the knowledge I am Brahman, I am Satchitananda, I am Satya, and the word is Mithya. The moment that I understand Satya and Mithya, I can experience Mithya during my awakened state, without any conflict with my knowledge. I am Satya, and everything resolves itself in Satya. Why? Because we are talking about two orders within the only real order, which is Satya, which do not really impact on one another. Consciousness does not impact, but consciousness pervades Mithya, because it's like the mirror who reflects all these phenomenal objects, but mithya does not impact satya. Therefore, so like in the dream state, the cold, because I'm dreaming to be at the Himalayas and there is a lot of snow and cold, but I'm sleeping in my room and it's very warm and cozy. So there in my sleep, there is snow and a lot of low temperatures, but that low temperature of the sleep state does not overflow in my bedroom. My cozy, warm bedroom remains warm, okay? But in my dream, I'm experiencing extreme cold. So it does not affect. Mithya never affects satya. Therefore, once you have your knowledge, once you are free from this fundamental ignorance, so duality will remain intact. And the body-mind complex is going to remain intact until it exhausts its Parabhada karma, okay? Ishvara will know the time to go. And if Ishvara will know if we need to come back for another round as well. Therefore, experiencing of duality does not conflict with the knowledge of my nature as non-dual self. The experience of duality does not negate or conflict my nature as non-duality, okay? So I am the self, Satya, and I am non-dual, means to say I'm the only reality here. Nothing exists beyond me, but those projections or those reflections occurring within myself, appears to be like a mirage, something, attractive that somehow traps all my jivas, because of my power, the power of my great Mr. Maya, as we say. Okay. Any questions? I think we are all experts in this understanding, which is so important, which is a clear understanding between Satya and Mithya. Because if we understand Satya and Mithya, we are not going to be superimpose Mithya and Satya and Mithya, because that is the source of confusion. We're talking about two orders of reality. One is reality, and the other is not real, it's an appearance occurring in reality. And we cannot expect, certain things that belong to the nature of Satya, work in Mithya. And we cannot believe that certain things which are the attributes of Mithya, we're going to take with us to Satya once I get moksha. You understand? So all this mutual superimposition, confusion, needs to be resolved, and that helps us to move very, very quickly in developing this vision of our true nature as non-dual conscious existence. Mark, are you with us? Okay, I heard you.
Net coverage, so I can't turn the camera on now.
Yeah, I just want to know if you are there with us. Thank you.
Okay.
Non-duality is not a state, because every state has a subject and object. Non-duality is knowing the difference between knowledge and ignorance. Okay. Allow me to edit this paragraph. Instead of no duality, because then it starts becoming a little confusing, a little more difficult to grasp the meaning, and more vague as well. Instead of non-duality, we say moksha is not a state, okay? Moksha is definitely not a state, because every state occurs within duality. We need an experiencer and an experienced object. So any state involves the experiencer and the experienced. This is the state we look for again and again to have a nice, beautiful state. And the state allows us to experience something that is very pleasant, okay, such as peace and silence. So moksha is not a state, because every state is within duality and requires a subject and an object of experience. Moksha is knowing the difference between knowledge and ignorance. So what it means, this is a sentence that comes up very often in the teachings of Ramji. Because here and there he says, if you know what is knowledge and your ignorance, if you know your knowledge, you know knowledge and your ignorance, so you are free. Yeah. So, and some people does not really understand that statement. Okay, and it's a statement that is a little bit dangerous. Why? If you know your ignorance, and if you have your self-knowledge, you know knowledge and you know ignorance, and you know the difference, and it's so easy to believe, like, okay, and then I don't care for my ignorance, because I know that this is ignorance and I know this is knowledge, but yet I'm still subject to live under the spell of ignorance, and then that is not really moksha or self-knowledge. You understand? Self-knowledge needs to fructify to the extent that you are not living under the tyranny of ignorance. You know, it's okay to understand this is knowledge, this is ignorance, and I am beyond whatsoever I experience. The true meaning is like that Ramji implies. He says, you know what's knowledge, you know what's ignorance, and then you're something other than both. And that's correct, okay? But knowledge, when we talk about knowledge Vedanta, is not just knowledge in the common sense, it's self-knowledge. So if you have the self-knowledge, okay, I am Satya and I'm full, whole, and complete, and then there is not much room for ignorance to push you around, compelling you to chase the objects in samsara and getting all the emotional hang-ups and so on. Instead, oh, again, oh, this is ignorance. But no problem. I know what is ignorance and I know what's knowledge. No, we have to have this knowledge really transform our lives, as we say, as Swami Paramarthananda often says, okay? It is a fact that whatsoever you see, you are not that. If you say, I know knowledge, I know ignorance, it means to say that you should know that you are something other than knowledge and your ignorance, okay? But how many people know, this is true knowledge, or this is fake knowledge? And how many people are going to infer that I am something other than the both extremes of what I am experiencing? You understand? It's very rare, because the moment that you step out and you set your identity as the seer, the experiencer, and then immediately you are going to be protected by ignorance pushing you around. And then your knowledge, the knowledge in respect of your Purna nature, which burns vasanas like nothing else. You understand? There is a common belief propounded by some adherents of direct paths that there is no duality in deep sleep, and therefore deep sleep is Advaita. It may be a particular form of apparently non-dual experience, like certain epiphanies and samadhis as well, but it's not non-duality. The notion of a non-dual state is due to unsupported inference. So what is the inference that makes people in the direct path, or people exploring yoga? You know, yoga is within duality, unless you are dealing with Yan yoga, which is the yoga of no contact, means to say there is no object to be contact, you know. So everybody who is going to be doing yoga, it's doing so due to this misconception, which is derived by unsupported inference. So what is the inference then? In the awakened state, the individual believe that she, the absence of the awaker, you know, means that there is no experiencer in deep sleep, and therefore one is the self in that state. So we draw this kind of parallel to say, no, in the sleep state, I'm sleeping. I was awake and then I fall into sleep, and then my awaker disappears and the world disappears. I am in deep sleep. It means that the self is related to no experience and no object of experience. Okay, so there is no visual vrit. The visual thought, the aham of the awaker is no longer there, and then the experience disappears, and one believes there is no experiencing entity in deep sleep. Okay, why? Because in the awake state we have the absence of the awaker. Once the awake state turns into the dream, the deep sleep. However, if one is the self in deep sleep, right? If one is the self in deep sleep, one must be the self in awaking and dream as well. And why it says that? So if you say, I am the self when the world disappears, but I am not the self when the world appears and once the dream world appears, you understand? So what's the flaw in that conclusion is that how can you exist without yourself? You understand? And why yourself would be in contradiction with the appearance of those projections, of those phenomena that occurs within you. But the idea that the world is the not self, and if I experience the not self means that I'm not the self, is based on the confusion between Sat and Mithya, because the appearance of the world within me, consciousness, does not make any difference, because it does not change, it does not affect me, because I am Satya, and those reflections are Mithya. So I don't need to have the disappearance of the awaker, meaning to say the awaker and the world, to be the self. I am the self all through, like in the Mandukya Upanishad describes. However, if one is the self in deep sleep, one is the self in the wake and the dream. Nonetheless, sleep begins when the waking disappears. The waker must disappear, and then sleep appears, and then the sleeper disappears, and then the dreamer appears, and then it goes back and forth until the dreamer, the sleeper, comes back to appear as the waker. So how can the self to be present only as the deep sleeper? You understand? In the Mandukya Upanishad, we see the self, it appears as the frog, jumping through these three states. So the self is always there, you understand? But the entities, they are, the frog that jumps from one stone into another stone in the river of samsara. Okay, so we are having Mithya, we are having this experience. The self is the common denominator, the common ground, and it's always there through the three states. This confusion can be removed by careful study of the Mandukya Upanishad, which clearly states that a subtle entity, prana, jiva, or a thought, a modification in consciousness, vritti, is usually commonly described as a thought, but I like the definition of a modification in consciousness. So what is the most primordial modification in consciousness? Is aham. So from the point of view of the Jiva Atma, all the knowledge is relevant only in relation to us, the Jiva Atma. So what's the most fundamental modification in consciousness? Is aham. And then after the aham, idam, the world of namarupas occur, and then the interaction between aham, also, e o mundo, in the world of objects. So the most fundamental vrit is aham, and this aham, it's in the awakened state is a conscious aham. It's a conscious vrit. Okay, when it dreams, it becomes a different aham, and it is kind of a subconscious vrit. Okay, but it is in there because it is experienced. In the dream state, we experience either the dreamer and the dream world, the dreaming experiencer and the objects of the dream world being experienced are there. When we convert, when Shwara changes the composition of our minds and makes us to sleep, he said, okay, you have done already enough. So go to sleep and take a rest because tomorrow is again another day. I don't want you to be burned out. Okay, Mark was outside. I brought him back now. Okay, so we change from one state to another. And then when we go into deep sleep, it appears that I disappear, but we do not disappear because as the Upanishad says, there is there a certain vritti. There is a very subtle modification in consciousness. And this is the trick here. Sometimes, depending on the direction of the text or what it wants to reveal to us, it shows that in the state of deep sleep, one experiences this fullness of non-duality as the self, okay? And in some other passage, in some other text, it says that it's not that the self is experienced its purna nature, its non-dual nature. It is a very subtle modification in consciousness, which yet is an experiencing agent, and it's called the prana vritti, the prana jiva, okay? And here it's saying that the prana jiva is experiencing in deep sleep, okay? And that is responsible for the experience of limitlessness. So we love to sleep. We call it, Anandamaya Kosha, that state of experience of our non-dual nature. But it is a non-dual nature, seen, experienced, because it's experience, it has to be within duality, okay? So you cannot experience your non-dual nature. You can be your non-dual nature, but you don't experience your non-dual nature unless we play with words and we say that you experience just namarupas, which are not real according within me, but everything is reduced to I, myself, consciousness. So we can play with words, but basically the prana jiva is experiencing limitlessness, but it is a limitlessness which is experience. It's not knowledge, because its experience is within duality. And this limitlessness is unconscious, totally unconscious. Nobody comes out of deep sleep self-realized. You understand? There is total ignorance, but this ignorance is the true meaning of the proverb, ignorance is bliss. You understand? Because there you experience non-duality, which is one aspect of our nature, which is the ananda aspect of our nature. Our nature in Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda. In deep sleep, we don't experience Sat, we don't experience Chit, we don't experience Sat in a conscious way, not in a subconscious way. We do not experience deep sleep consciously, and we don't experience Sat and we don't experience Chit in a conscious way, but we experience Ananda, and we know that in retrospective, okay? And the scriptures say, why? Because in deep sleep, we only experience our Ananda nature. We don't experience our Sat and Chit nature. You understand, Claudio?
Good to know. Good, because it is a point of view that I never considered about deep sleep. The fact that you don't experiment Sat and Chit. I have to think about that because it's new to me, this.
Yeah, it's new for me too. I mean, Shwara keeps putting knowledge in my mind to share with you guys. First time that I expressed this. But I know it comes through Shwara, and I know that is the true knowledge of the Upanishads, you understand? Where am I? Okay. It's the limitless. We experience an experience of limitlessness. It also points out that this experiencer is ignorant. So it's absolutely unconscious of its limitless nature as consciousness, okay? As Satchit. Although two words are used to identify the two experiencing entities in their respective states, they are actually one jiva. So there are two words are used to identify the two experiencing entities. Why two? Why not three? Because there are three experiencing entities. But never mind. The jiva experience and the dreamer, the awake experience, the dreamer experience, and the sleeper, the prana, also experience its limitless, blissful nature. But regardless of these three experiencing entities, there is only one jiva appearing in these two or three states. Rather, like a person who behaves like a husband in the presence of his wife and a son in the presence of his or her father, okay? So different, beautiful, elegant analogies often presented in Vedanta. Moksha is not a non-dual state, but it is a clear knowledge. So now moksha here is defined as clear knowledge. You know? So this clear, now what is a clear knowledge? What is the difference between clear knowledge and unclear knowledge? So unclear knowledge is a vague, abstract, or doubtful self-knowledge. We are talking about self-knowledge, of course. Huh? So if it is vague, abstract, or doubtful, so it may not really produce what we call freedom from samsara, freedom from ignorance, freedom from suffering. You understand? So moksha is a clear self-knowledge, doubtless self-knowledge, not subject to forgetfulness and so on. Right? The non-dual state, therefore, is not a state. So again, he was beginning presenting moksha as a non-dual state. Moksha, therefore, is not a state. Okay, let's keep it simple. It is the self experiencing itself. This is another strange concept. Okay, so the moksha state is not a state. Moksha is not a state, as we properly, clearly know. And then it says, a state requires duality, requires the experiencer and the experienced, okay? And then here it says, moksha is not a dualistic experience. It's not an experience in duality. It's not a state in duality, okay? If we want to bring experience into the equation here, into the context, you have to say it is the self experiencing itself, which is also to say that is an experienceless experience, which is not an experience at all, okay? So let's try to break it down in simple words, because Ramji loves to make the sentence a little complicated, okay? It looks more sophisticated. But moksha is not a state. It's just a clear, doubtless self-knowledge. Therefore, it does not occur into duality, and it's not a state. And it is the self-experience itself, which is to say that every experience is the experience of the self. It is an experience without an object of experience. That's what it means. That is an experienceless experience. It means to say that is an experience without an object of experience, okay? So what is self-knowledge? Is it an experience? If you want to say that the self experience itself through all human experience, and the self-knowledge is the self experience itself, means to say that it's the self experiencing itself regardless of the presence of an object of experience and the absence of an object of experience. Okay, why? Because the self must be there for experience to take place. How can we experience duality without the self? Therefore, every experience proves the presence of the self, without which experience is just impossible. Okay, so let me go back. It's not an experience at all. So it is an experience, but it's not an experience, and we know it. Yeah, we know it. As from our Sangha, we know that the self-knowledge, moksha. First of all, the self is not an object of experience, and moksha is the knowledge in regards of my true nature as satya, as purna. Okay, and it's not an experience, as I often like to put it. Self-knowledge is made of knowledge and knowledge and knowledge alone. There is no experience involved in self-knowledge. Okay, self-knowledge is direct knowledge in regards to what you are, and it does not involve having an experience. It does not involve having, it involves, yes, it does involve having a clear mind, a sattvic mind, a contemplative mind, so that you can finally gain this direct paroksha jnana, this direct, immediate self-knowledge, because you know by inference that you cannot experience duality without yourself. If you're not having yourself with you, there is no possibility of you experience duality. And then what's the fuss of wanting to remove the world so that you can experience the self? You understand? There's no point. I mean, you can only experience the self if you experience the world, if you experience the self first. Once you understand this, you are done with trying to remove Jagata from your experience of life. You understand? I stopped trying to do that before self-knowledge took place, when I got the understanding of the absurdity and also the fact that it does not work, because the moment that I would suspend my efforts to remove the world with samadhi or bliss and so on, the world would come back and would disturb my mind, because I did not have the knowledge. So it was the first time that I got a text from the guru of Nisargadatta Maharaj presenting the clear description, between knowledge and experience, and stating that self-knowledge is made of only knowledge and knowledge alone. So is the self experiencing itself? The best way to put it is the self apparently experiencing itself, because the self is one without a second, but the self appears as the Jivatma. And then the self goes through three states, and one of these states, the awaker, it experiences this physical material universe. And then the self is having an experience. And this experience is real? No, it's mithya. It's an apparent world. It's an apparent phenomenon. Okay? So it's an apparent reality. So if the self is experienced mithya through the jiva, the self is experienced itself, because mithya is always resolved in satya, because fundamentally it's all consciousness, it's all the screen of consciousness on which Maya produced this projection. So the self is experienced itself through all these superimpositions of namarupas. But this is an apparent reality. Therefore, the self, the truth is the self, in that case, could be said to be apparently experiencing itself, because experience can only happen in the apparent reality called mithya. And of course, the self would experience itself, apparently experience itself through the jivatmas, because it needs a means, a vehicle to experience. So is it clear? Mark say knowledge is experience, no? I know I'm Mark. I experience being Mark. Knowledge is experience, no? I know I'm Mark. I experience being Mark. I know I am a man. I experience being a man. Well, knowledge is experience as long as you are dealing with knowledge of the phenomenal world, okay? When you say you are a man, it means to say you are identify yourself with the body-mind, okay? When you say I am the name Mark, you identify yourself again with meteor, and you having a meteor knowledge, okay? So we are talking about self-knowledge, okay? Self-knowledge is not an experience, okay? So self-knowledge, the knowledge of your true nature in satya as consciousness. Let me see again the words of, okay? Knowledge is experience. No, self-knowledge is not an experience, but it's not going to erase the experience of duality in the mind of the yoni, okay? So in duality, okay, knowledge is experience. No, knowledge is every knowledge relate to experience. Experience, of course, in duality is subject to error, is subject to corrections, to revisions, you understand? So it's never good knowledge, really. Very rarely it's good knowledge, okay? So you experience your body mind and you say, I am Mark and I am a man. Good enough. We use this analogy sometimes to describe that knowledge, when it's clear, when it's doubtless, it's always good. So fair enough. Self-knowledge is not the knowledge about your body mind, but it's the knowledge in respect to your true nature as the most subtle of the subtle, which is consciousness, which is existence. And that knowledge, once it's clear, and then it's always good, it's always available, okay? And therefore, we say that knowledge is that it's always good once it's properly assimilated and integrated, okay? But knowledge, self-knowledge is not an experience, Mark. Self-knowledge is made of pure knowledge, okay? And it's knowledge about something which is not an object of knowledge. It's the knowledge of your true self, you understand? And that which is always ever present, allowing you to experience the body-mind, your name, and so on. So self-knowledge is not an experience, but knowledge in regards to the phenomenal world always produces an experience, of course. Every moment we are being bombarded with experience, with stimulus coming from the world, and all of them produce an experience. We are going to have a sensation for every karma that hits us. Every parabolic karma is going to give us a feeling, an experience. And then we're going to interpret that kind of experience. And our interpretation is always subject to error. There is only one knowledge that's not subject to error. It is self-knowledge. Do you understand, Mark?
Yeah, I do understand. Yeah. However, I feel that if the knowledge is absolutely, completely firm, and that becomes your experience, you experience yourself as Satchitananda, whether you're experiencing duality or not, you experience yourself as the self when the knowledge is absolutely firm. Even though it's not a distinct, special experience.
Okay. So Ranji likes to demystify this concept often, say the self does not feel like anything, okay? Once you know you're the self, you're not going to have an experience of the self. It doesn't feel like anything because it's not colored by any attribute. It's not something like an object which is defined by its attributes that you're going to have a beautiful, wonderful experience. No, what's going to happen, Mark, is the knowledge, I am Brahman, I am my Purna nature, fundamentally, essentially, I am full, whole, and complete. This knowledge is going to change your causal body and your subtle body to the extent that your experience of your body-mind complex and Jagata, the world, is going to change. But the self does not feel anything. There is no experience of the self. You know that you are that by which you can have experience, but I'm not an object of experience because there are no attributes attached to me as consciousness. Okay, so what changed is my experience in regards to my body mind and the world I experience through my body mind. So you're gonna have a different experience in regards to yourself, in regards to the world, but the self is not an objective experience. It does not feel like anything. The fact that you know I am the self is not going to consider me an experience of the self, although that the self is always ever experienced without being an object of experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Moksha is not a non-dual state, but a clear self-knowledge, a clear, doubtless self-knowledge. It's not a state. A state is something that changes, that come and go, okay? A state is going to come, a state is going to change from moment to moment, and it's going to change. And then, you know, on the extreme example, we're going to go through the 3 states of waker, dreamer, and deep sleeper. The non-dual state, therefore, is not a state. Okay, the non-dual state, moksha, yeah, is not a state. Okay, so why to call non-dual a state if it's not a state? It's better to say moksha, therefore, is not a state. It is the self experience itself, which to say that it is experienceless experience. To say that it is available implies that it's not available in some other time. So even to say the self is always available, you know, therefore it's only available through knowledge. And this is a fact, only available through this self-recognition, this self-knowledge. To say that it's available also may be complicated because it implies that it's sometimes not available. No, the self is always available. I mean, and we have to understand the limitations of words, you know, and it's always ever available. And whether you have the knowledge in respect to that or you are ignorant in respect of your nature as the Purna self, you understand? That's what it's trying to say. So it's always there, but we can only enjoy, you know, and appreciate our Purna nature once we have this clear knowledge / understanding. Yeah? Its unavailability is only due to what? Lack of knowledge. And again, we are back into the same starting point. So we need to neutralize or remove this ignorance. And the only remedy is the scriptural knowledge. Even if non-duality is experienced in deep sleep, it is of no use to the awakened state entity. Because the awakened entity created by Ishvara experienced duality by its very definition. So the awaker was designed to experience duality. So the whole thing of the awaker refusing to experience duality is almost like offense to Ishvara. Ishvara designed the jiva to experience and learn. And some people, and it's not something that is, it's a general rule. There are exceptions to the rule. There are people like Ramana Maharaj who came into the body, came into the world, immediately he realized, like, oh, there is a mistake here. But I understand, Ishvara makes no mistake, but I'm not interested in experiencing the world. I'm going to look for a nice, cozy cave, and I'm going to be in deep samadhi, okay? So there are exceptions, but a lot of people in the world are trying to meditate, to be a yogi, to remove the world, believing that they are going to be free only by removing the world. But the Jiva was designed to experience duality, because it is within duality that we can extract knowledge, understanding. We grow through experience, okay? Experience is going to make our mind mature, okay? We are going to experience and we're going to suffer of samsara long enough until we develop a distaste, a dispassion towards samsara, and then we gradually begin turning towards the scriptures and a competent teacher until I can really, genuinely say, okay, I'm no longer interested in being an experiencing entity chasing objects in samsara. But I respect Ishvara, I respect my Prarabdha karma. I'm not going to walk away from my duties, from my roles in society. I will keep dealing with this duality, but not as a means to complete me, not as a means to, to be happy and satisfied. Even if non-duality is experienced in deep sleep, it's of no use to the awakening state entity, because the awakened state entity created by Ishvara experience duality by definition. Magical thinking is required to imagine that the deep sleep, non-dual experience, prana, can somehow be transferred into the awakened state and bring its experience of non-duality with it. Okay, this is just a fantasy. I never heard anybody making fantasy, but Ramji is presenting it as a magical fantasy, a magical thinking. Oh, no, it's okay. Now I understood the three states, and I am, as a deep sleeper, I am experiencing Anandamaya Kosha, which is my limitless nature. So I'm going to somehow find a way to wake up from my deep sleep and then fully self-realized, because I'm going to bring my experience of limitlessness from that state to this state. So this is fantasy, magical thinking. The one immortal Jiva's appearance in the roles of the awake dreamer in deep sleeper is controlled by Ishvara, not Jiva. No matter how fervently the awakened state entity would like to experience those kinds of epiphanies, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Okay, Ishvara has made you experiencing entity, and you say, no, my understanding is that if the world is present, I'm bound to the world. Therefore, moksha is only possible with the removal of the world. I develop a strong vasana for Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but then even though I keep going into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I keep coming out, and every time I come out again, I feel bound to the world. So the world is not going to go anywhere, even if you are the best possible Samadhi yogi. The belief in experiential non-duality is called yoga. Yoga is duality, Dvaita by definition. It takes the self to be real and take the world to be real as well. Okay, so it takes the self to be real, and I project, how you say the better word in English, I concede, no, it's another one. I project reality into the world, and now I'm dealing with a situation that reality is duality, because there is a reality, the self, and there is a reality of the world. So I took the world and I brought to Satya, and now I'm confused. You understand? I superimpose Mithya in Satya. So no, the world is Mithya. It takes the world to be real. It takes the self to be real. Liberation for dualistics involves gradual elimination of the world until the self is left. So for yoga, this liberation involves a gradual development of nirvikalpa samadhi vasana until I can stay for long period of times free from the world. But if this is true, there is no moksha for yogis, because that state always turn back into the awakening state, and the person did not gain any knowledge during nirvikalpa samadhi, because in nirvikalpa samadhi, the intellect is suppressed. For moksha to take place, we need teaching, and we need to understand that the world and the self are not in conflict, as we are determining here. If you want experiential moksha, you need to develop, you need to be a perfect nirvikalpa samadhi. But nobody wants nirvikalpa samadhi, because if you experience it, you cannot experience your life. Now, there are people who are willing to pay the price. There are people who are willing to pay the price of renouncing the life, dualistic experiential life, to be in that self-induced sort of deep sleep state, the nirvikalpa samadhi. Some people are willing to pay that price. Okay, but what Ramji is saying here is what is the good? Okay, because self-knowledge it is attractive, because it can turn your waker into a happy individual. Okay, he's happy because now he understood its true nature, and he knows that the world is not a threat to his true nature, and then he relaxes and he becomes an enjoyer. So everybody wants to enjoy whatsoever life we have. We have left after so many lives searching for this self-knowledge. Huh? So even if you want nirvikalpa samadhi, if you are willing to renounce all experience, in life, yet you're going to be frustrated. Why? Because nirvikalpa samadhi has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every time these guys come out, they feel frustrated and limited again. You understand? And then they want to go back. And in their mind, there is a dream that maybe they are going to go there and stay forever. But it's not the case, because it's not under their wish. It's the gunas are managing the situation there. Nobody wants nirvikalpa samadhi, because if you go in nirvikalpa samadhi, you cannot experience your life. If you are here not to be here, you would not to be here. So again, it's offense to Ishvara. I'm here, I say it's a mistake, I don't want to experience duality, and I'm going to work to develop vasana for nirvikalpa samadhi. I want to sleep. And then I often say, why not you finish with your life? You understand? So if you don't want to experience, you think it was a mistake, it was not for me, put an end to your life, rather than again and again go through all of these, and then Ishvara pulls you back again, and then you fight with Ishvara and want to go back, put an end. Huh? So if you are here, not to be here, you would not be here. You cannot avoid life. You cannot reject life. Additionally, samadhi ends at a certain point and requires enormous effort. It's impossible to exert effort endlessly. Endlessly. So the samadhi will cease on that account. Okay? Just imagine the yogi in its early days had incredible vasana for nirvikalpa samadhi. But then as the body-mind ages, the body-mind begins to develop more and more tamoguna. And that tamoguna complex, is going to reduce the ability of the yogi to go into nirvikalpa samadhi, which requires a lot of sattva. So things are going to change. And the yogi is going to see that it's impossible to exert that level of effort endlessly, because the body-mind complex is going to decline. Reality is non-dual. That is the knowledge. That's what we call self-knowledge, which liberates the individual from the ignorance that binds the individual to samsara, causing great suffering. So you cannot have two real objects, to be here and not to be here. Even if there are two real objects, they could not be removed because the word real refers to something that does not change. And if it does not change, how can it be removed? So you cannot have two realities, two objects. So I am a reality as the self, the world is reality as well. I want to remove the world. So reality refers to something that can never be removed. And what is that which cannot be removed? Are you with me still, Claudio? Is it getting a little too intense? What is that? What is that which is always ever present, not subject to be removed, not subject to change? Okay, so it's the self. If there are two realities, and then one of, because even if there were two real realities, they could not be removed, because the word real refers to something that does not change. If you say that the world is real as well, and then you will never be able to remove it by effort, by nirvikalpa samadhi, because the very definition of reality is that which is always ever present, and that which cannot be removed, and that is what? I consciousness, right? If I am that which never changes, I can never be removed. Okay, and if I project reality in the world, and then the world will never be able to be removed by my yoga effort. Okay, we're going to stop here. Any questions?
So wonderful satsang. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. We meet again in a few days, Thursday, same time, and now we're going to get going with the Panchadasi. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Namaste. We meet again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alina.
Thank you,
Bye
Ma.
now.